All right, let's just dive right into it. Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're unpacking a really fascinating cultural earthquake that is currently shaking up the tech world. So, for decades, right, the tech industry has been famously and honestly, proudly indifferent to aesthetics. But suddenly, almost overnight, the uniform is changing, the whole philosophy is flipping, and taste is the new buzzword on everybody's lips. So, why the sudden pivot? To really wrap our heads around this shift, we're going to jump straight into the catalyst for the entire debate. The article we are discussing kicks things off with this exact viral post from tech executive Greg Brockman. Just a really simple 6-word declaration: taste is a new core skill. Now, in a vacuum, that might just look like a totally harmless observation. But in the context of Silicon Valley, it was an absolute spark in a powder keg. I mean, this single post racked up over 2.6 million views and instantly set the internet ablaze. It kicked off this massive, sweeping debate about what tech culture actually values, and maybe more importantly, who gets to decide what good taste even looks like?
All right, Section 1, the viral taste debate and the internet's counterattacks.
As you can probably guess, the internet wasted absolutely no time mocking this pivot by weaponizing starter pack memes. It's brilliant. On one side, you've got the classic old-school tech uniform, right? The Patagonia puffer vests, the noise-canceling headphones, the basic white sneakers, we all know it. But then, on the other side, you see the highly curated, newly christened person in tech that has taste starter pack. We're talking Japanese denim, crazy expensive niche perfumes, obscure print publications, and suddenly everyone is using the word aesthetic as a noun. These memes ruthlessly and hilariously expose the sheer absurdity of an industry that historically ignored design, now suddenly trying to dictate high-end aesthetic standards for everyone else. But the conversation quickly escalated way beyond just clothes. It became about professional competence. This wild argument started emerging that taste in how you dress is actually a direct signal for your ability to develop taste elsewhere. The claim essentially posits that, hey, if you intentionally try to look good and you consistently miss the mark, well, you probably won't be able to spot an elegant solution to a math problem, or design a beautiful product, or write clean code. Literally overnight, your wardrobe is being equated with your actual engineering skills. Wild, right? Moving right along to Section 2, the minimalist irony, or basically 30 years of mockery. Think about it. For 30 years, the tech cohort institutionalized a very specific, rigid ethos. That t-shirt, jeans, and running shoes uniform wasn't just a lack of fashion sense, it was a deliberate signal. It was this badge of intellectual seriousness meant to broadcast to the world, hey, I am way too busy innovating to waste cognitive resources on how I look. They actively mocked the liberal arts. They mocked the study of aesthetics. Yet today, we see this striking contradiction. These exact same figures who champion raw utility over aesthetics for decades are now quietly sending their kids to study liberal arts and philosophy, they're showing up front row at Fashion Week, and they're loudly demanding taste from all their peers. To really sum up the frustration people are feeling about this, the article we are discussing uses this absolutely hilarious and honestly deeply accurate analogy. It says we're essentially in a 90s cartoon where Bugs Bunny is hitting us and then hiding his hands while we're distracted, just trying to catch what hit us. It perfectly captures that endless, dizzying loop we're thrown into by tech leaders who constantly, and I mean constantly, move the goalposts. First, they tell you caring about aesthetics is a total waste of time. Then, the split second you finally adopt their minimalist uniform, they flip the script, declare that taste is a core skill, and leave everyone else scrambling to catch up. Which brings us to Section 3. Why now? Well, blame AI. It really is the multi-million-dollar mystery, isn't it? Why is an industry that totally normalized looking like you just rolled out of bed suddenly so obsessed with refinement and judgment? Why not 10 years ago? Why not 10 years in the future? The fascinating answer, as it turns out, lies deep within the very technology these companies have been aggressively building and pushing out into the world. The article we are discussing reveals that artificial intelligence has actually surfaced a massive problem that the tech industry spent decades creating. Think about it. When AI can generate infinite text, infinite code, images, and designs instantly, and at literally zero marginal cost, simply making things is no longer the hard part. The barrier to production hasn't just dropped, it has plummeted all the way to the floor. Anyone can make anything instantly. So because of that, the underlying economic reality has entirely shifted. The old bottleneck was production, having the technical skill to actually sit down and build the app, or write the code, or design the interface. But today, the new bottleneck is curation. In this absolute sea of infinite AI-generated noise, The real tangible value lies in knowing which things are actually worth making in the first place. It's all about selecting, editing, and refining. And that fundamentally, at its core, is a problem of taste. Okay, section 4. Can you buy taste? To answer that, we first have to agree on what taste actually is. The article we are discussing provides a really crucial definition here, reminding us that we need to separate taste from talent. Talent is innate, right? It's something you're born with. But taste? Taste is a judgment skill. It is highly, highly trainable. It's built through years of accumulated exposure, deliberate comparison, and incredibly honest self-assessment. Every single time you evaluate why a certain building, or a meal, or a piece of code works while another one falls flat, you are actively building a mental reference library that sharpens your judgment. Now, here is where the irony gets so rich you could cut it with a knife. The reason so many people feel like they completely lack taste right now is because their judgment muscles have totally atrophied. And why is that? Well, because we've spent the last decade outsourcing our choices to fleeting trends, relying entirely on recommendation algorithms, and depending on social proof, like retweets and likes, to tell us what is good. We literally outsourced our own judgment to the exact same infinite feeds that these tech executives built. So, the big question, can these wealthy executives just buy their way out of this? Well, the article we are discussing concedes that money absolutely solves the surface problem. You can definitely pay to look good. You can hire a high-end stylist, buy an entire luxury wardrobe, or fly your top executives to Milan Fashion Week, and boom, you look completely respectable in a single afternoon. But there is a massive catch to just pulling out the black card to fix a lack of taste. Which brings us to our final point. Section 5. Costume versus character. This ultimately boils down to a really beautiful philosophical distinction explored in the article Costume versus Character. When you just go out and buy an aesthetic, or you hire a stylist to drape you in expensive Japanese denim, you're acquiring taste from the outside in. And that is merely a costume. True taste, however, is developed from the inside out. It requires the difficult, unglamorous, internal work of actually studying art, understanding history, and building character over time. You just can't fast-track that process with a weekend shopping spree. So the core lesson here, the real takeaway, is that you simply cannot outsource your judgment. No amount of wealth, no level of status, and no amount of high-end Fashion Week attendance can close the gap between just buying a trendy new uniform and genuinely developing a critical eye. Taste requires you to do the heavy lifting yourself. It requires you to look critically at the world around you, rather than just blindly following the newest starter pack meme. I'm going to leave you with this provocative thought to ponder as we wrap things up today. We've seen the minimalist cycle come and go, and now we're currently riding this taste cycle, completely driven by the rise of AI. But as the algorithm inevitably shifts again in the future, and we know it will Silicon Valley actually take the time to build the deep cultural and aesthetic foundations they spent 30 years mocking? Or are we all just watching the exact same rat race move into a much more stylish lane? Thank you so much for joining me to explore this fascinating shift, and hey, keep sharpening that judgment.